Number 10. L'Oreal. Not to be confused with L'Oreal, which is a brand. Just to be clear. L'Oreal is the sister of Captain Marvel, who first appeared in issue 18 of the current Captain Marvel series, which started back in 2019. She was genetically bred by Kree scientists who created her to be a powerful warrior using the DNA of 2 accomplished Kree warriors who came before her, one of which was Carol Danvers' mother, Marielle. That makes L'Oreal Carol's full Kree half-sister. Carol was working as an accuser when she first ran into L'Oreal, and was tasked with apprehending and executing her, as she was believed to be the Kree responsible for a large massacre. Carol learned of L'Oreal's parentage and believed her to be innocent, so instead spirited her away until she could locate the person who was truly responsible for the massacre. After the events of Empire, where the 2 sisters fought side by side, L'Oreal ended up becoming Emperor Hulkling's new accuser, taking Carol's place. Also, L'Oreal, fun fact, is really funny, and if you get to read her as Emperor Hulkling's accuser, you'll see what I'm talking about. Number 9. Katie Chen from the MCU. Katie, or Ruin Chen, is probably one of my favorite new characters in the MCU, if not just my full-on favorite now, I think. Katie is the best friend of Sean and grew up with him, but later learns that her friend Sean has a complicated past that he's been running from for basically years. And in fact, Sean's given name was never actually Sean, but instead Shang-Chi. Katie might not have superpowers, but she comes with a can-do attitude no matter the odds. We also learn that despite the fact that Katie works as a valet alongside Sean, that she actually graduated from Berkeley, but isn't really doing much with her college degree. Katie loves driving fast and karaoke, a woman after my own heart. Number 8. Werewolf by Night. The new Werewolf by Night is known as Jake Gomez. He made his first appearance in the newest Werewolf by Night series in issue number 1. Jake discovers as a teenager that he can transform into a wolf during the night, no full moon necessary. Jake ends up wrestling with his werewolf form, attempting to use it to do some good for his people while struggling to be in full control of himself while transformed. Jake is supported by his sister Molly, who helps him by using music, creating playlists to help soothe him, allowing him to gain more control, and his grandmother. Number 7. Zhu Xialing from the MCU. Zhu Xialing is the sister of Shang-Chi, who appears in his self-titled feature film. We learn that despite the fact that her father never felt it would be appropriate to train her, at night she would practice in secret, watching his elite soldiers, known as the 10 Rings, during the day, and attempting to teach herself their movements during the night. Like her brother Shang-Chi, she also became a woman on the run. However, for Xialing, instead of running from her potential destiny, she attempts to seize for herself the role she feels was denied to her growing up. It's likely that the Shang-Chi film won't be the last that we'll see of this new Marvel Cinematic Universe character, and that she won't necessarily be quite as black and white as some of the other Marvel characters that we've come to know, which I'm so ready for. I love when characters have so much depth.
Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Ide Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idea's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Fantomex as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, Using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form. Although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious, to be honest.
Number 10. Starling. Starling is the girlfriend of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. At least, at the time of this recording, I'm pretty sure she is. Starling is Tiana Toombs, the granddaughter of Adrian Toombs, who is the villain known as the Vulture. Tiana's father is Adrian's son, Frankie, and her mother is Lenora. While she often sports wings in homage to her grandfather, she isn't a villain like he is more often known for being. In fact, Adrian actually helped Tiana after her father abandoned her and her mother, and then later after her mother tragically died in surgery. Adrian had always brought money to Lenora to help support her and his granddaughter, and after Lenora's death, he actually offered to become Tiana's guardian, which she accepted. He was also the one who gave Tiana her suit and actually inspired her to become the hero she is today, despite he himself usually being known as a villain. I kinda love when legacy characters go the opposite way of any other characters they're known as being descendants of. Starling made her first appearance back in Saladin Ahmed's run on Miles Morales' Spider-Man from 2019 in issue number 5. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you can also go check out our Top 10 Marvel playlist for even more good old Marvel content. Number 9. Somnus. Somnus was first introduced in a super cute story that was featured in the 2021 Marvel Pride issue. In his origin story, we learn that Carlo Valentino is actually an old flame of Daken. They met in Canada in the 1960s in Toronto, Ontario. At the time, Carl was living a closeted life, both as a mutant, I believe, and also as a queer man. During a one-night stand, Carl used his powers while they slept to live an entire life out with Daken in their dreams together. His mutant powers basically allow him to manipulate and control the dreams of others, an Oniromancer, as we would say, which is how he was able to do this. Seemingly spooked by this experience, having lived a whole life with Carl in his dreams, only to wake up and find it had been just that, a very vivid dream, and that Daken was still as he was the day prior, after living a whole life overnight, Daken was sure to leave before Carl awoke. While the two never really talked after this, Daken seemingly never forgot Carl. After Carl passed on, presumably from old age, with Daken attending his funeral, Daken actually asked to have him resurrected, giving him a second chance to live the life that he always wanted, proudly, out of the closet, both in terms of his orientation and as a mutant. Carl took the name Somnus for himself, his mutant name, and would later join Kate Pryde's Marauders team. I also super duper love his design. His outfit is so good. Somnus is such a cool character. Number 8. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme made his first appearance in Jason Aaron's run on Avengers, which started all the way back in 2018 and is still currently ongoing. Soldier Supreme would not make his first appearance until issue number 50 of the series, meaning that he appeared for the first time in the comics back in December of 2021. Soldier Supreme is a magical superhero from the 1940s who also would be trained by the Ancient One and become the leader of the Secret Invaders. Despite existing in the past in the comics, he would be introduced as a retcon character in the present, our present, during an adventure the Avengers had involving time travel. Soldier Supreme is Sebastian Zardos, possibly related to another Phoenix host who is also a Zardos, or perhaps even possibly distantly related to the adoptive family of Nightcrawler, who are also the Zardoses. Who knows? Sebastian was known to have descended from old powerful magic through the witches of Wundagore Mountain. Number 7. Moon Knight. No, not Mark Spector of Earth 616. Obviously, he has been around for some time and is not really new, making his first appearance back in the 70s in Werewolf by Night issue number 32. But you know who is new? The Moon Knight of Earth 818, a hero who first appeared in the 2021 volume of Avengers Forever in issue number 1. This Moon Knight is known by the name of Mariama Spector. She appears at the end of that first issue where we learn she is part of the team and that an alternate Tony Stark as Ant-Man seems to lead. Tony of Earth 818 calls his team together after believing that something is shifting and that they might actually stand a chance at saving the whole world. or whatever. Mariama would appear within the first issues of this run of Avengers Forever, and would also appear in some of the later issues in the series too. The first issue of the 2021 Avengers Forever series was released in December of 2021.
Number 6. It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Synch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she is a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1! Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Banff, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Banff, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. Tell me that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force. which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinity from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Darkhold Universes. Earth 21129, Earth 42222, Earth 52433, Earth 64211, and Earth 37640. Now, this one point is actually going to cover multiple different alternate Earths in one, because they are all part of the same event. The Darkhold is basically a codex written on flesh by the elder god Chthon of all his evil works and spells. There is a stone transcription and a series of scrolls that act as the same thing. But when the true Darkhold was found by Victorious and Doctor Doom, it opened a pathway between the other world and our world, and awoke Chthon in preparation for the coming conflict and to temper them with madness, which is just the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. Victorious and Scarlet Witch had Iron Man, Blade, Wasp, Black Bolt, and Spider-Man all read from the book. The problem was they read too far, were corrupted, and saw horror story versions of their lives, resulting in 5 alternate realities and 5 2021 stories you need to read. Number 5. Earth TRN 891, Dark Ages. In the alternate Earth TRN 891, after a battle with an ancient, powerful, galaxy-attacking robot that was trapped inside the Earth billions of years ago called the Unmaker, Doctor Strange opened a portal to create an EMP that would defeat the Unmaker. This worked, but Strange died before he could close the portal. This resulted in a huge EMP that shut off all electricity on Earth. This led to various wars in the post-apocalypse, killing billions of people. Eventually, things calmed down and people lived in various different communities, surviving against attacks from vampires and werewolves. In Europe, however, the mutant apocalypse had taken over, and using brainwashed geniuses from around the world, began attempting to reawaken the Unmaker for his own villainous deeds. Number 4. Bloodline. In the J.J. and Henry Abrams written storyline from 2019, Mary Jane Watson is killed by a villain known as Cadaverous, after Spider-Man is swarmed and beaten pretty badly by his minions. 12 years later, the story has a one-armed version of Peter Parker, who is now the honestly pretty bad single father of Ben Parker, Peter and Mary Jane's son. After Cadaverous returns out of hiding and kidnaps Peter to use his blood for his evil plans, it is up to the new Spider-Man, Ben Parker, with the help of his friend Faye Ito, and old Tony Stark and Riri Williams, to fight Cadaverous and his minions, which includes a cyber-zombified team of Avengers. Look guys, in this reality, YouTube has this algorithm thing, right? And when you like and subscribe to us, it signals to the YouTube overlords that we are worthy of being seen by all you lovely people and new people, helping us grow and continue to pump out videos like this one. So I just want to say thanks for doing that for us. We appreciate every like and subscribe you drop. Okay, on to the top 3. Number 3. Earth TRN 852, Heroes Reborn. When Phil Coulson sold his soul to Mephisto in the 2021 event Heroes Reborn, he was given an object called the Pandemonium Cube, which he used to warp reality, creating the alternate world of TRN 852. Here, the Avengers were never assembled. instead replaced by the Squadron Supreme of America, which consisted of the heroes Hyperion, Nighthawk, Power Princess, Blur, Dr. Spectrum, and Skymax. Tony Stark never created the Iron Man armor, Carol Danvers never became a hero, Captain America remained a capsicle, and the Hulk was banished to the negative zone. After the Earth 616 version of Blade ended up on this Earth, he began assembling the Avengers again, starting with Captain Popsicle. Number 2. Earth 001, home of the Inheritors. First appearing in Superior Spider-Man number 33 in September 2014, Earth 001, or Loom World, is home to the Inheritors, who are a clan of very strong beings who hunt and feed upon the life force of animal totems, specifically spider totems, meaning all the Spider-Man and women of the Marvel Multiverse. Loom World is also the home to the Master Weaver and the Web of Life and Destiny, which is basically a model of the entire universe and allows for travel to different realities. The Web of Life and Destiny and the Master Weaver were captured by the Inheritor family, who used it to hunt various Spider-Man. The event this takes place in is an awesome one, and if you get the chance, I highly suggest that you give it a read. Number 1. Earth 15513. There was nothing, followed by everything. Swirling, burning specks of creation that circled life-giving suns. God, Doom, created the light. Then there was Earth. The firmament cooled and he raised up a land, this holy land, the world, and upon it he set his kingdoms. Earth 15513, also known formerly as Battle World, and more recently as Battle Realm, is where God Emperor Doom created his new world using the power of the Beyonders after the destruction of the multiverse in the 2015 Secret Wars event. After the final battle between God Emperor Doom and Mr. Fantastic, Battleworld was destroyed and became the center of the new multiverse. The remaining reality became Battle Realm, where the Elders of the Universe, the Grand Master and the Collector, held the contest of champions. Starting off at number 10, we have Forget Me Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget Me Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget Me Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget Me Not's existence. Clearly, that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got I-Boy. Why is a guy named I-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7. Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine.
Number 6. Swordbearers of Arakko. The Swordbearers of Arakko were the chosen sword-bearing champions who fought on the side of Arakko and Amenth against Krakoa in the Otherworld tournaments. Overall, they performed very well in the contest between those two nations, even considering how bizarre some of Saturnine's challenges and competitions were. Like a fashion show. That was a thing that happened. They were led by Genesis as Annihilation and joined by Bay the Blood Moon, Death and War of the original Four Horsemen, Apocalypse and Genesis' children, Iska the Unbeaten, Genesis' sister, Pog Urpog, one of my favorites, Redroot the Forest, Solemn, Summoner, grandson to Apocalypse and Genesis, the son of War, and White Sword of the Ivory Spire. They made their first appearance in the 2020 Wolverine series in issue number 6, and were first referred to in Ten of Swords Creation, issue number 1. The group was created by Jonathan Hickman and Tinny Howard. Number 5. Tarn the Uncaring. Tarn has been a major antagonist throughout the modern X books. Honestly, he's so terrifying. I think he deserves to be a villain to many different mutant supers. He's shown up in both Hellions, acting as a villain against fellow villain, who's still kind of villainous but is supposed to be on the good side, Mr. Sinister, and his team of unlikely heroes, the Hellions. The poor Hellions. I miss them. Tarn also fought against Storm, who has become regent of planet Arakko, formerly known as Mars. Don't worry though, Storm beat him in combat, because Storm's a badass. Even though Tarn sits on the Great Ring of Arakko, their governing body, he still seems like he's always planning something terrible. He's basically like the Arakko version of Sinister, which makes him infinitely more dangerous and overall worse. Tarn made his first appearance in Hellions issue number 6 in 2020 and was created by Zeb Wells and Carmen Carnero. Number 4. Nameless the Shapeshifter Queen. While this villain was pretty short-lived, especially considering how hype she seemed. I mean, she is called the Shapeshifter Queen. She is still a pretty important villain for you to be familiar with if you are a fan of X-Men Storm. Storm has been doing a lot of cool stuff lately in the comics, but one of the most epic things to have come her way has been taking her seat as regent of planet Arakko and becoming a queen in a sense once more. Region. Sorry, Storm. In order for her to earn her seat among the rest of the Great Ring of Arakko, she had to take down Nameless. The two fought to determine if Storm would take the seat, and Storm actually won the fight. She offered mercy to Nameless, but instead the Shapeshifter Queen decided to use Storm's power, as she had adopted Storm's form in battle, to end her own life, which seems to have stuck with Storm, who was caught lost in thought thinking back to that battle in X-Men Red issue number 1. Nameless made her first appearance in the 2021 Sword series in issue number 8. She was created by Al Ewing and Goyo Villanova. Number 3. Severe Blackmore. Xavier Blackmore is a new villain who recently appeared in Wolverine. He becomes an enemy to Logan after Wolverine tracks him down to learn more about Solemn. Solemn is believed to have stolen Wolverine's Muramasa blade, which is why Wolverine's trying to track him down. Wolverine and Solemn seemingly team up to take down Xavier, but instead Solemn betrays Wolverine, giving him the slip and leaving him to face Xavier alone. Fortunately, Wolverine does beat the big Iraqi pirate and even gains possession of Blackmore's beloved and in Emma's opinion grotesque ship. Xavier made his first appearance in the 2020 Wolverine series in issue number 14. He was created by Benjamin Percy and Adam Kubert. Number 2. Moira X. While Moira McTaggart has been known for years as an ally to mutant kind, the whole line of X books kind of changed the way that we see her. Way back in the days of Dawn of X, within House of X, we learned that Moira was actually a secret mutant herself. Her powers allowed her to reincarnate, meaning after she died, she would be born in the same body again, getting to live out her life once more with the knowledge of the previous lives that she'd lived before that. Moira, upon learning she was a mutant in one of her past lives, sought a cure for her condition, wanting to be normal and to give that option to other mutants the world over that maybe, just wanted to be normal. However, Destiny and Mystique stopped her, blowing up her lab and killing her with fire, warning Moira that creating a cure wouldn't be so easy, and that she was naive to think that it would only be offered to those who wanted it. As such, Moira made other more discreet plans for how to kinda end mutant kind, because she didn't really like it, even though she kind of pretended to like it. By building a paradise for the mutants, that was her plan. She orchestrated this in her current life, with her overall objective kind of being to separate mutants and create the perfect society where they could slowly die out. When Destiny returned, however, she and Mystique saw right through Moira and revealed that she was still, just as ever, an enemy to mutant kind. So despite the fact that Moira is an older character, this revelation of her being a potential antagonist for mutants was pretty new. These revelations came to light in the Inferno series in 2022. Number 1. Albert Carey. Albert Carey is one of the newest villains on the scene and has recently made his first appearance in the X-Force 2022 annual. Here he appears as a scientist working for Orchis. That's right, it all comes back to Orchis in the end, baby. While we don't know too much about him, as he just made his first appearance, he did go up against Wolverine, Domino, and Quentin Quire's Kid Omega. His plan was to do a short burst of tests on the captured mutants after luring them into a trap. He planned on them dying during said tests, but on keeping the data of said tests to learn from, basically. Well, they stole the motherboard, which stored information for the potential devices and stratagems they were testing. Albert Carey, who seemingly ran the tests, is confident that with time they can actually rebuild what they lost, and more vital, they now actually have more information, which opens up new knowledge and possible future questions and experimentation as a result. We don't really fully know what he's up to, but he seems to be testing a new weapon, and from what we've seen of Orchis, you can bet that this is likely just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what Carey and Orchis will have in store. I'm sure we will see him again. We'll definitely see Orchis again, that's for sure. Number 10. Las Espadas Gemelas de Toledo. This pair is a new set of villains who first appeared in Spider-Woman in issue 11 of the current run that started in 2020. There are two brothers who wield magical swords which seemingly grant them great power, but also kind of possesses them. Spider-Woman goes up against both brothers, Ray and Luis, in issues 11 and 12 and seemingly defeats them both. The brothers end up in a fight against one another, where Luis is forced to cut off Ray's hand as he has become completely ensorcelled under the blade's influence, after he wields them both at the same time. It seems, however, that this isn't the last we've seen of the villains. Ray eventually gets himself a new mechanical sword hand, and both brothers swear to get revenge on Spider-Woman for getting them locked up and pitting them against one another. So while these guys only appeared in a couple issues, we're definitely going to see them again soon. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about all of the cool Spidey things, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Trapster. Trapster is one of the members of the all-female Sinister 6 group, Sinister 7 group I guess now, to appear in the Sinister War 4-issue limited series. She is a member of the Sinister Syndicate, which is the name for the all-female team and is led by the Beetle. We don't yet know Trapster's true identity, all we know is that she claims to be the new Trapster and that yes, she spells her version of the supervillain codename without the E, seemingly appearing as the new, younger, and hipper version of the villain. I don't actually know if Trapster is ever a villain who could be made cool, but it seems like this version is at least trying to do that, reclaiming the title and the use of the paste gun with some pride, which you gotta give her points for. Trapster first appeared in the 2017 Free Comic Book Day Secret Empire issue. Number 8. Seiya Ishii. Seiya Ishii is like the new arch nemesis of Silk, who recently made her debut appearance in Silk's newest series starting in 2021. Seiya made her first appearance in issue 1 of the series and is the tech and business savvy daughter of Matsuko Ishii, founder of tech company giant Fujinet, and Silvermane, supervillain and crime lord of New York. Seiya has set out to outdo both of her parents, becoming the new head of Fujinet and also aiming to become an even greater crime lord than her father, or crime lady I guess. In the Silk series she plays antagonist to Cindy Moon and allies herself for a time with the Japanese cat demon Kasha. Number 7. Electro. No, not that Electro, not Max Dillon. Instead we are talking about his accomplice turned supervillain herself, Francine Fry. Francine was obsessed with supervillains and ended up becoming the partner in crime and potential partner in romance of Max's. Back when Max's powers were on the fritz and extremely unpredictable, she kissed him and as a result was electrified, seemingly to death. However, the Jackal would bring her back as a clone. When the attempt was made to restore Max's at the time currently lost powers, something went awry with the procedure and instead it was Francine who ended up superpowered. With her new powers, she herself also became known as Electro. Francine made her first appearance in the 2014 Amazing Spider-Man series in issue number 2. Number 6. Black Winter. Black Winter is going to be a huge big bad that will be coming our way eventually in the comics. Likely much later on, like we're talking a few years away. Black Winter isn't actually a completely new character, but has recently been reinvented in terms of their part as one of the biggest bads ever faced in the comics. Black Winter actually first appeared under the name The Creeping Plague back in the 60s in Thor issue 169. But more recently in 2019, the entity appeared under a new name in Silver Surfer Black issue number 4, becoming known as Black Winter. The entity can take on any shape or form it pleases and is responsible for ending Galactus' home universe. The Black Winter will also likely be the way the current Marvel universe ends. While Thor and Galactus teamed up in the beginning of the current Thor run, Volume 6, Donny Cates' run, to destroy the Black Winter, Thor really only succeeded in temporarily defeating the entity, leaving Thor with visions of a bleak end to come, which includes the return of Thanos. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more of the newest characters that we've seen in the last year or two, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There's lots of new characters. There's lots more people I want to talk to you about, so please give it a thumbs up. Share it. Get it the views so I can give you the video. Number 5. Yelena Belova from the MCU. Yelena Belova is like the little sister of Black Widow in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, though to be clear she isn't blood related to Natasha, or not that we know of anyways. It turns out both Yelena and Natasha were part of a team of undercover Russian operatives and spies who are posing as an all-American family as their cover. They were in the US to gain important scientific intel when they were kids that the head of the Red Room, Dreykov, wanted to ultimately help expand and grow his empire. Yelena was posing as Natasha's little sister when they were undercover. Even after Black Widow became an Avenger and thought that she had actually taken down the Red Room, it was revealed that Yelena actually remained a spy and operative for the secret organization due to the fact that earlier on Black Widow and Hawkeye had actually failed to complete that mission to destroy the organization in Budapest. Yelena will likely be taking over and becoming a sort of White Widow, if you will, in the MCU. At least that's what I think we're gonna know her as. Working on a team that Contessa Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine is putting together. In the comics, Yelena is a bit of a different character. She is a rival of Black Widow's who is sometimes an ally and sometimes a foe, depending on the circumstances. And as far as I know, she's never worn quite as cool of a vest as her MCU counterpart, though she was a model at one point. That was a thing that happened. Number 4. Genesis. Genesis is a pretty important character who apparently has always existed, but who we never really knew about. Ooh, mysteries. She made her first full appearance in the 2019 run of X-Men back in issue 12. We would learn that she is the wife of Apocalypse, who was long ago lost to her husband, who ended up leaving another mutant island nation known as Arakko. hero. The other half, it turns out, of Krakoa. Genesis is a strong warrior and an all-around badass, basically pretty much exactly what you'd expect Apocalypse's wife to be. She also happens to be a mother, as it turns out that Apocalypse and Genesis together had a whole family of strong, also badass mutant children. Currently, Genesis and Apocalypse are back together and are likely taking a little off-panel vacation, as we haven't really seen them in a little while, so I hope they're enjoying themselves. Hope they're getting a time to reconnect, because they've been apart for so long. Number 3. Shang-Chi from the MCU. Shang-Chi first appeared in the comics back in the 70s, but it took him 13 years to make his way into the MCU from when it started way back in 2008. Simu Liu is the actor to take up the role of this new hero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Shang-Chi is introduced in his own self-titled feature film Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings, where, no major plot spoilers here, no major plot spoilers, we learn that he is a man running from the past, living under the alias of Sean in the United States, after escaping the supposed wrath of his father, criminal overlord Wenwu. We follow him on his journey as he is suddenly recalled home, back to his family under mysterious circumstances, all while uncovering his family's story, history, and the legend of the Ten Rings. If you haven't seen Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings yet, I actually cannot recommend this movie more. I think it actually may have become one of my all-time favorite films, both within and without the MCU. That is just how great it is. I cannot praise it enough. If you haven't seen it yet, pause this video, go watch it, and then come back. That's how good it is. You gotta go right now. Number 2. Venom. That's right, there is a new Venom in town. This one is the son of Eddie Brock and his ex-wife Anne Wang. His name is Dylan Brock. Dylan's existence at first was a shock to Eddie, and it also seemed as though Venom was involved in his genetic creation as well, being that Venom was bonded to Eddie at the time of Dylan's conception. Dylan and Eddie both, however, managed to survive past the crazy summer event that was absolute carnage, where he resurrected Cletus Cassidy as a Grendel symbiote version of Carnage, threatened to awaken the god of symbiotes, Null, who would threaten the entire Earth. While Eddie did manage to save his son Dylan, he could not avoid waking Null, who then arrived on Earth during another summer event, Marvel's King in Black event. With Null defeated, Eddie took his place as the god and ruler of symbiotes, and the Venom symbiote was tasked with keeping an eye on Dylan. Dylan has since bonded with the Venom symbiote, and together the two are now the new Venom. So you can enjoy that. Kids grow up so fast in comics. They don't get to be kids for very long, do they? Number 1. Kang the Conqueror from the MCU. Kang is a character that I really never would have expected to see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's happened, and I gotta say, I'm weirdly hyped about it. Kang made his first appearance in the season 1 finale of Marvel's streaming series Loki, where he was played by Jonathan Majors. We already knew to expect Jonathan Majors as the character, but didn't anticipate him to show up so early in that role, instead expecting him to arrive in the MCU in Ant-Man and the Wasp's film Quantumania, where he was believed to be the major villain. It turns out, however, that there isn't just one Kang, but infinite Kangs across the multiverse. One of these Kangs was the one behind the Time Variance Authority, or the TVA, it turns out, but now that it has been toppled, this has allowed multiple realities with other, possibly even more sinister, powerful, and ruthless Kangs to spring up. So get ready for some Kang mania, it sounds like. Also, we need a Kang movie, because I want Quantumania and I want Kang Mania to also be a movie now.
Number 10. Tech On. In this 2021 storyline, the Red Skull comes into a new power that removes the powers of other heroes. Tony Stark uses his technology to create the Iron Avengers. Captain America, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and obviously Iron Man, basically the most popular Avengers, all get Iron Man-like mech suits that they can use to fight against similarly meched up villains. The whole thing was basically a partnership with Bandai Namco to create Avenger-themed mech toys. So it has no numerical Earth number. But who cares? The art is sweet, the idea is original, and the toys are kinda cool. Number 9. Earth 1048. The reality of Earth 1048 is actually the reality seen in the Marvel Spider-Man game that came out on PlayStation, plus its associated comics and novels. Seeing as this game is highly beloved by many Spider-Man fans, including myself, I thought it deserved a mention. The universe first appeared in the Marvel Spider-Man Hostile Takeover novel on August 21st, 2018, which served as a prequel for the events of the game. In case it wasn't clear, this is also the universe featured in Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, and will be the same world in the next entry to the series, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. All the games so far have had fantastic open world versions of Manhattan, some of the best web swinging in a video game so far, tons of alternate reality and original spider suits, and are all really fun. Number 8. Earth 8. First appearing in Spider-Man Volume 2 number 14 in 2017, Earth 8 is a pretty great place. Essentially, it's a possible future of the reality of Earth 65. A utopia where Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy got married and were part of a team called the Amazing Eight, whose members included Spider-Boy and Spider-Girl, Miles and Gwen's kids, Spider-Ham, Penny Parker and her Spider-Mech, Jerry Drew Spider-Man, and an unnamed Spider-Woman that resembled Kraven the Hunter. The Spider-Gwen of Earth 65 came to Earth 8 to ask for the Amazing Eight's help to fight Silk in her reality. Unfortunately, Miles and Gwen were on their second honeymoon, so she only got the Amazing 6 out of 8, but that was enough it seems. Number 7. Earth 2319. Appearing in the New Avengers Volume 3 number 14 in 2014, Earth 2319 is one of the Earths that dealt with the incursions. This Earth had gone through a fourth age of apocalypse, which resulted in the collapse of the Phoenix Eggs, which in turn led to Magneto forming the floating twin cities of Tian, where mutants would be safe. The floating cities ended up being the point of an incursion witnessed by the 616 Mr. Fantastic. An Illuminati team was formed on the Earth that consisted of Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Doom, Black Panther, Yellow Jacket, both Captain Britons, Betsy Braddock and Brian Braddock, Iron Man, and Emma Frost. It was basically used as an example of what the Sidera Maris, which are an army of robots created by the mapmakers, could do after they invaded from the incursing Earth, resulting in the eventual destruction of Earth 2319.
Number 6. Tosin Oduye. Tosin Oduye is a hero that made his first debut in the current Black Panther series by John Ridley. He made his first appearance in issue number 3 of this 2022 series. He is a hero of Wakanda, but is actually greatly separated from Wakanda in some ways as well. He belongs to the Marube tribe, who chose to separate from the mainland of Wakanda and basically isolate themselves as they rejected the ideas of many who believed that vibranium should be bended to their own will and used like a tool. Instead, his people focused on finding a more natural approach to vibranium, finding natural ways to temper it, and focusing on flowing with vibranium as opposed to using it simply to do whatever they felt vibranium should be used to do. The Marube cover themselves in vibranium tattoos, and this is how they are given their powers. The Marube had seen much war come and go during the generations, and their goal was and is to basically stand as Wakanda's protectors when the time comes. Following the transition from a monarchy to a democracy, Tosin was one of the heroes who rose up to protect the new Prime Minister of Wakanda, declaring himself as Tosin, who fights for the one true Wakanda. Number 5. Amass. Amass is one of the mutants who is new despite actually being really old in terms of the history in the comics. In fact, possibly one of the oldest mutants we've ever seen. They made their first appearance in Marauders issue number 4, the current volume by Steve Orlando, not the previous run by Jerry Dugan. This is volume 2 we are talking about here, which started in 2022. Amass is actually one of my favorite new mutants when it comes to their power set and their potential. They can combine living beings into one, amassing and unifying them into one entity. For mutants that join together, this is exceptionally cool, as all the mutants' powers will be contained within one being, making them, while combined, extremely powerful. And I believe that if Amass were to do this with regular superheroes that were non-mutant superheroes, that would also be true, which is pretty cool. You could also combine non-mutant superheroes and probably mutants. The potential's crazy. If they have the right power sets, as we learn in the current Marauders series, while combined, the mutants can even use their powers together to do things like time travel. Pretty wild, right? Number 4. Thea. Thea is another mutant who comes from the very first mutant civilization, which actually existed way in the past, but basically were all wiped out. Their history hidden away for millennia by the Shi'ar, or more specifically, the secret was kept by the Shi'ar's secret society known as the Kin Crimson, who are basically supposed to keep some of the worst Shi'ar secrets secret to protect the Shi'ar, protect the crown. Thea was one of the mutants from the Threshold, the name for their ancient mutant civilization, who had their consciousness, memories, and genetic data stored within a codex, with the hopes that one day someone would retrieve that and be able to free those locked safe safely within it, bringing them back into the living physical plane. This group was known as the Threshold 3 and included Amass and Crave as well. Thea herself is a time manipulator, with her mutant power being chronokinesis. She and Tempo seem to develop a closer connection early on in the Marauder series. Thea first appears in the same issue that Amass first appeared in, issue number 4. Number 3. Monolith. Gosh, I love Monolith's design. Monolith seems to be an ally to the Hulk. Currently, the Hulk in his own series, titled simply Hulk, is flying around space but is actually the mind of Bruce Banner in the body of the Hulk, with Bruce having taken control and modified Hulk's body to turn him into like a spaceship, basically. Having always wanted to live as a scientist and explore the world and go on cool space adventures, Bruce struggles to see a home for himself on Earth after everything he has done, and so he decides to actually just take control of the Hulk and go to outer space. A sort of self-imposed exile, if you will, but one where he gets to actually do what he wants to do as a scientist. While on his space adventures, he runs into a kind of planet Hulk that seems to be perfect for people like him. It seems exiled Hulks, who were dubbed abominations in an alternate reality that they hail from, seem to have come to this planet and ended up settling here, all becoming super strong and smart over time. Initially they were basically exiled there, but then they basically just decided to create their own civilization. Monolith is their ruler, being the queen of this seemingly Hulk planet. Honestly, her existence is one of my favorite things about this entire series. She first appears in issue number 9 of the current Hulk series, volume number 5 from 2022. And while, yeah, we don't really know if she's specifically a superhero yet, I feel like she's leaning that way. Number 2. Wreck-Rap. Who is Wreck-Rap? Well, he very recently made his first appearance at Amazing Spider-Man issue number 17, where that question is, of course, answered. Wreck-Rap is a demon from Limbo who admires Spider-Man, looking up to him. He originally takes the name of Parker Man for himself. He ends up becoming an ally and supporting character in the current Amazing Spider-Man story, Dark Web. In issue number 17, Parker saved him from another demon who basically wanted to beat up the latter named Parker Man. This act inspires him to want to be a hero like Parker Peach Man, and so he sets out to try and get superpowers. In the end, he instead gets a symbiote and ends up taking a new name for himself after he is told that the demon army doesn't really need another Parker and that he had it backwards. After all, they weren't looking for more heroes, they were actually looking for more villains. The name this demon settles on is of course Wreck-Rap, because it is Parker backwards. Get it? Because they were like, you got it all backwards, and he was like, alright, I'll have it backwards then. Number 1. Red Goblin. While Normie Osborn, grandson of Norman Osborn and son of Harry Osborn and Liz Allen, is a character who has been around since the 1980s and even became a villainous version of Carnage and the Goblin combined, known as the Goblin Child, back in 2018. He also recently underwent a new change, becoming known as Red Goblin himself. At first, I was worried that Norman would actually be returning to this mantle when this was teased, the return of Red Goblin, and almost instantly, of course, then returning to the side of villainy after only recently becoming good in the comics. Goodness. But it looks like, at least in terms of Red Goblin's return and that character's identity, I was wrong, which I'm happy about. Red Goblin instead returned to us in Venom issue number 15 from volume 5, the 2022 run, as Normie Osborn. Normie was given a symbiote that is the result of the combination of both the Carnage symbiote and the Anti-Venom symbiote. While in his Red Goblin guise, he seems to be acting solely as a hero who basically aims to help his friend Dylan Brock, aka currently known as Codex, save his father Eddie Brock, currently the King in Black in his Bedlam phase, and formerly known as the anti-hero, and I would say now full-fledged hero, Venom. Number 10. Orchis. Orchis is by far one of the most important newest X-Men villainous groups that you need to know. If there is anything you take away from this list, this team should be one of them. Orchis is basically the group trying to do such dastardly things as create the Mother Mold so that they have an endless supply of Sentinels to help defend humanity against the ever-growing threat of mutants. Orchis is also surprisingly made up and funded by other organizations, some of which are more villainous in terms of their heritage, while others are actually known for being more heroic instead. Orchis made their first appearance early on in House of X issue number 1 back in 2019. They were created by Jonathan Hickman and Pepe Larraz. Number 9. Horticulture. One of my all-time favorite new villainous groups to hit the scene. Horticulture is a team of extremely scientific botanists who made the decision to revolt against the corporations that they worked for. Their members also just so happen to be elderly ladies. Their plan is to reclaim the Earth and revive it as it is dying, because of the very industries that they worked in. They aim to take control of plant life so that they can decide who gets fed and who gets dead, controlling the world through the food supply, basically. They also have big beef with the X-Men. Horticulture made their first appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 3. Horticulture was created by Jonathan Hickman and Lionel Francis Yu. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to support us in other ways, be sure to head on over to our Facebook page and click that like. It really does help us out. Like, follow? I think it's like. Click like. Number 8. Pale Girl. The Pale Girl was one of the first villains we'd come up against in the current newest run of Wolverine. That is volume 7 overall of the Wolverine series, the 2020 series, what I'm talking about here. I can't believe it's been over 2 years since this series started. That is madness to me. The Pale Lady was initially believed to be a hallucination brought on by drugs, but was later revealed to be herself a mutant, Meredith Milley, whose powers allowed her to control the minds of others. It was also revealed that she was the one behind the Flower Cartel, which was illegally transporting and selling a powerful drug made from the pollen of Krakoan flowers. The Pale Girl first made her appearance in the 2020 Wolverine series in issue number 1. She was created by Benjamin Percy and Adam Kubert. Number 7. Hominis Verendi. Hominis Verendi are an enemy to all mutants, but their main beef lies with the Marauders. The Marauders are one of my favorite mutant teams, especially among the new books that we've had. Honestly, one of the best books around, I think, just in general. If you haven't read Marauders yet, you need to do that. Hominis Verendi is actually made up of a group of kids who were once members of the Hellfire Club's inner circle, but they aren't the only ones to join the Hominis Verendi, although they are the main folks as they pretty much run it as the kings and queens of that organization. Well, the Hellfire Club itself has become much more altruistic and is now run by Emma Frost, Captain Kate, formerly known primarily as Kitty Pryde, and Sebastian Shaw. Hominis Verendi is like their evil reflection. They seek to destroy mutant kind and Krakoa's reputation. Number 6. Hyperion. While Hyperion has existed for a long time as a member of the Squadron Supreme, we just recently got a seemingly alternate version of him who showed up in Heroes Reborn, which was intended to greatly affect the future of Marvel's main continuity. This alternate version of Mark Milton is currently designated to the reality given the temporary, non-official number of 852. In this reality, Marcus was not just one of the Earth's primary superheroes and leader of the Squadron Supreme, but also found a friend in non-powered Daily Bugle photographer Peter Parker, who appeared similar to DC's character Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal. Although as we saw from Peter's perspective, he didn't quite feel the same way about his relationship with superhero Hyperion. He was like, Hyperion's a jerk, and Hyperion was like, he's my best buddy. Oh dear. Time will tell if this alternate version of Hyperion will return and perhaps even play a role in the future of Spider-Man, as at the end of Heroes Reborn, in the aftermath shown in Heroes Return, we learned that Hyperion misses the alternate Peter Parker and their alternate reality friendship. Aww. This alternate version of Hyperion made his first appearance in the 2021 Heroes Reborn series in issue number 1. Not to be confused with the other Heroes Reborn series. Just to be clear. Number 5. The Sinister Syndicate. The Syndicate might not be a new single character, but it is a new group of characters that were brought together in the comics. We've already talked about newer characters who are also members of the team, including Francine Fry's Electro and the new Trapster, Hold the E, but the group itself was actually founded by Beetle, making its first appearance in the current run of Spider-Man way back in issue 25. The team is now one of the main competitors in the Sinister War story, despite the fact that they're not actually a Sinister 6 team, they're kind of like a Sinister 7, but it's alright because they're the Sinister Syndicate, so they can still be 7 and be the Syndicate. Currently the team features Electro, Scorpia, Trapster, White Rabbit, Anna's Kraven the Hunter, and Lady Octopus. Number 4. Demogoblin. Demogoblin is the new name taken up by the former Demogoblin. She came to be a sort of reinvented version of that character during the Absolute Carnage event, making her first appearance under this name in issue 1 of Absolute Carnage Lethal Protectors. And while the Venomverse has gone on to become kind of its own thing, it also remains ever intertwined in the Spider-Verse besides. After all, even in Absolute Carnage, Spider-Man was also a main player, as he was one of the few people Eddie Brock trusted during their fight against Carnage and the Cult of Null, aka the Church of the New Darkness, as they were known. Demogoblin was created when Cletus Cassidy as Carnage sacrificed his love Shriek, claiming the codex located in her spine and also using her death and body to resurrect Demogoblin, hence Demogoblin, who is also really feeling that Carnage love, so Yay, I guess? For people that I guess shipped Shriek and Carnage and are like, no more Shriek. It's alright, you have Demogoblin, basically it's Shriek, but it's also Demogoblin, but as a lady. Comics. It's confusing sometimes, isn't it? Number 3, Octavia Vermis. Within the Spider-Verse, there are of course many different heroes and many different villains. Octavia Vermis was one such villain introduced to us in the newest Spider-Woman series in issue number 2, as a new arch-nemesis for Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman. And although her evil plots were seemingly thwarted in the end, you can likely expect that Octavia will return in the future. She was introduced as the daughter of Otto Vermis, a Hydra commander who Spider-Woman herself killed years ago. Octavia, however, is not looking for revenge for her long-deceased father, however. Instead, she is looking to make herself stronger, make the perfect progeny, and have Spider-Woman kind of rule by her side over an epic criminal empire. Fortunately, Jess has other plans for Octavia, but while Octavia might be defeated for now, you can bet this new badass villain will be back, and whenever she does return, I'm honestly gonna be pretty scared for Jess, cause Octavia was pretty crazy. And probably still will be whenever she returns, and is not a dinosaur anymore. A dino person. Number 2, Kindred. Kindred is both a new villain and an old friend of Spider-Man's. For quite a while in the comics, Kindred's identity remained unknown, and many fans pondered just who Kindred really was, as the villain claimed it had emotional ties to both Peter Parker and Norman Osborn. Kindred first appeared in 2018 in the first issue of the current Amazing Spider-Man series, which of course started off in that same year, and as of the time of this recording is still ongoing. Years later, we would learn that Kindred was apparently none other than Harry Osborn, returned from the dead and now part demon, part tortured soul. However, it also seems that there might be more to Kindred than meets the eye, and perhaps the villain is not only Harry alone, but could have even more identities that have yet to be revealed. If he truly is Harry Osborn, who knows? Number 1, Venom. Dylan Brock is the son of Eddie Brock and Anne Wang, Eddie's deceased ex-wife, and is now a huge player when it comes to the world of Spider-Man and Venom, and just the Marvel Universe in general. Dylan initially seemed to have a powerful influence over symbiotes, but lost these powers following the defeat of Null in the King in Black event. However, he recently has taken up his father's mantle, becoming the new Venom in the comics, after his father Eddie basically retired from vigilante life to take Null's place, becoming the god of symbiotes. And if you're wondering if Eddie's cool with it, apparently Eddie is cool with it, so it's all good. Venom had to bond with Dylan to save his life, and so now we got a new Venom. I'm into it.